Hi everybody, I'm Richard Hutchinson. I'm Talent Generation and Innovation Director at Capita. My role is responsible for developing our strategy around attraction and sourcing, but actually over the last 6 months it's also been looking at what tech we should be utilising to enable us to deliver a really great experience, not only for the candidate but also for the hiring manager and also recruiters as well. So what I'm going to really talk about today is looking at a focus on how we use tech to deliver an effective solution. So I thought first of all what I'd do is set the scene in terms of what the recruitment technology landscape looks like today. I'll then talk about some of the key principles of building an effective technology strategy that we as an organisation are applying, so that when we think about tech we're trying to kind of fulfil those key principles. I'll then share with you some of the key technologies that we've identified in the market. Now, what I'm not going to suggest to you today is that we're utilising all of those pieces of tech today, but they're on our radar as tech that we think are potentially suitable for us now and in the future. And hopefully we'll give you some things to go away and have a look at as potential pieces of tech that you might be interested in finding out a little bit more about. I'll then talk about how you actually understand the impact of tech on your solution and making sure that you're not just implementing tech and assuming that it's adding value. And there is a danger that we find tech, we implement it, but it actually puts you backwards in terms of process rather than enhances the solution. And then as a kind of takeaway, I'll just leave you with some key points to consider when you're thinking about this from your own perspective. So I guess setting the scene, this is a slide that Social Talent produced, and what they're really trying to demonstrate is all of the tech that is currently out there in the market. And I think if I look at that, there's a lot on there, right? But actually that's only a very small proportion of the tech that you could potentially find yourself looking at. And if you go around today, there's a whole load of tech providers also here today. Social Talent have very kindly segmented them into different areas for us, so helps me to start thinking about which techs I want to focus on in the first instance. But actually, the reality is, that kind of blows my mind. There's a whole lot of tech there that if we really want to do this properly, we're going to really struggle to get it right because there's so much to think about. There's so much technology that overlaps in terms of what it delivers. One piece of tech does one thing, another piece of tech does another. Some of it is kind of in the middle. So how do you identify the right tech for your own solution? And I think that's where the key principles that we've started to follow really become really important for us. And I think wrapped around all of our key principles, what we're doing as an organisation is trying to find a solution that enables us to go from workforce planning all the way through to performance management, so that we can actually really deliver a seamless process that has candidate at the heart of what we do, but goes across the whole solution. We also need to understand what works, what doesn't work, and potentially get to a point where we're able to kind of predict through analytics what future hiring might look like for us. So performance analytics is a really important piece for us as well. And if you think about all of those different techs that you might start to look at, actually it's really important if you think about candidate experience that you look at a seamless integration. What we don't want is candidates jumping in and out of different bits of tech and it feeling like a really fragmented process. What we want the candidate to experience is a seamless process that goes across. Some of the other key things that I think are really important is the stuff in the middle. So personalisation. I think we're in a world now where candidates expect a unique experience to them. They expect that experience to be personalised, whether that be about the actual experience that they experience, but also about the content that is served to them. So if you think about career sites, they expect to be able to consume content that's relevant to their background and experience, as opposed to just a static website that just serves as a fit for all purpose. Thinking about immediacy, we're in a world now where candidates don't expect to put a CV into an organisation and receive a response in 3-6 weeks. They actually now are expecting to receive things kind of immediately. And if you think about how many people in the room today have WhatsApp on their mobile phone and are using WhatsApp on a day-to-day basis, I would argue that probably a lot of you are using WhatsApp, right? And you're all used to that little blue tick that tells you it's been delivered, but you're also used to that second blue tick that says that it's been read, and then you sit looking at your phone waiting for the next person to reply, and why is it not saying typing yet? Because they've read it, why have they put the phone down? And that's the kind of world and environment that we now live in, and candidates are expecting that same principle. So what we're looking at is how can we enable that through some of the processes that we deliver across the recruitment process. Automation. If you think about when we consume on the web by sites like Amazon and John Lewis, we expect an automated process. We don't expect to necessarily need to speak to someone to enable our products to be delivered for us. And I think whilst recruitment is a personal people solution, I think candidates still expect, where possible, for parts of the process to be automated. And I think there's an important point here, that what I'm not saying is that we should just automate the whole of the recruitment process and that actually all candidates have that same belief. I think when we think about what we're doing across our organisation, we do target particular personas in different ways. So there will be some types of candidates that will expect more automation than others, but I think it's fair to say that on the most part, candidates would expect a organisation that is leading edge to have an element of automation within their process. So something that's really important for us. It gets mentioned a lot, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Does it exist, doesn't exist? Does it exist in recruitment? And what we're looking at as an organisation is trying to identify the tools that enable us to operate within machine learning and AI environment, but actually are doing what they say and can actually add value to a recruitment process. In the middle of all of that is that horrible G word, GDPR compliance, and we're getting very close to the 25th of May. It's critical that everything that we think about from a technology perspective enables us to deliver within the GDPR kind of guidelines. So when I'm looking at tech, it's something that's close to our thinking when we're thinking about the things that we need to look at. The other stuff wrapped around it are some of the other things that we also need to think about, and I won't go through those individually, but for example, mobile responsive. Interestingly, it's something that we don't necessarily talk about anymore. Actually, we kind of expect it as the norm. It's kind of expected that organisations have a mobile responsive career site and application process, but I wonder how many of you actually have a mobile responsive website and certainly application process to enable people to apply. Some of the other things that we're thinking about is simplicity. We don't want to overcomplicate this. We want to make sure that the process is simple and effective for the candidate and recruiter. We want to enable a process that we can plug and play into our core platforms. So we're looking at an environment whereby we understand that organisations have their employee record management system, and then on top of that they probably have their ATS that enables us to deliver the workflow. But what we're then looking at is the technology platforms that we can plug and play over and above that to enable us to provide a best process solution for candidates, hiring managers, and ultimately recruiters. So that's some of the key principles that we follow as an organisation when we're looking at what our tech stack looks like. When I started looking at this for Capita, what we started to think about was, what are all the processes that we need to think about to enable us to improve the solution? And actually, what we found when we started to map that out is that there's a whole load of processes that we need to be thinking about. All of the stuff on the right is the kind of individual processes. The stuff in the middle is the stuff that kind of wraps across all of it. And then you've got a whole load of stuff around the different types of recruitment that we might be thinking about trying to deliver, whether that be temp, statement of work, contractors, perm. So trying to fix all of that through technology is pretty massive, right? And it's one massive maze that you can just get lost in. So I guess the key thing that I would say to you, and something that we've definitely learned as an organisation, is that you definitely don't want to try and boil the ocean. You don't want to try and do too much too quickly. There's no way that we're going to find a technology solution against all of those different processes that enables us to follow some of the principles that we've applied, like things like simplicity, without having a really complicated solution. So what we're doing as an organisation is identifying the areas within our organisation that it makes sense to try and fix, whether that be because we've got a broken process, or whether that might be because we can make ourselves much more efficient, much more effectively by having technology. But if I went back and tried to find a solution for all of that in one go, I'd just fail quite quickly. So, I guess what I wanted to introduce next was some of the technologies that I've started to map out as being something that we think as an organisation could add some real value. And again, what I'm not saying today is that we're utilising all of these pieces of technology, but they're on my radar as something that when I think about our process for looking at what technology we will start to implement, these are the ones that I think we're going to go down the route of looking at in more detail. And I've mapped these out based on the kind of that workforce planning all the way across to performance management. And again, hopefully you'll get access to these slides after the event, and it might just help you with narrowing down on some of the platforms that you might want to take a little bit of a closer look at, because I think that they really could add some value for your organisation. I know in the last presentation we were talking about workforce planning, and Foresight is a great tool for enabling a workforce planning solution, an automated process that goes out to the organisation to find out more and enable them to start understanding what future hiring requirements might look like. The big area for me, because I sit in the talent generation, attraction and sourcing space, is the stuff in the attract, source and engage, which is why there's loads more icons in that space, because it's an area that I've really been spending a lot of time on. But if I was to highlight some other stuff that I'm not going to talk too much about later on, I would put Emborder on the top list of something that you might want to look at as an onboarding product that really moves away from just delivering a process to actually delivering a really fantastic experience for both the candidate and the hiring manager. And if there's one product that I'm not going to talk about too much about today that you should maybe have a look at, I would say that it's Emborder. But as I said, my key area is the attract and source solution. But just before I move on to a more detailed focus on that space, what I thought would be quite useful for you to understand is if, based on those bits of technologies that I've previously kind of highlighted, how that kind of fits in terms of the different technologies that we've started to identify and how that maps out to a wider process. So you can start to see how you might utilise some of those channels as part of your core solution. Now, you might look at this slide and go, well, hold on a minute, this is still way too confusing, this is still way too complicated, there's loads of bits of technology here, but how the hell do you make that all map together? And I'd agree, I'm not suggesting that you will necessarily utilise all of these channels, but it might be that your problem area is in shortlisting, and that's why you might potentially look at Pymetrics, which is a gamification tool to help you kind of enable you to shortlist candidates in a really effective and fun way for candidates. But you might also have a problem within the kind of attraction and sourcing space. And so what I wanted to kind of do next is really focus on an area that we as an organisation have started to tackle first, because as I said earlier, what we're not trying to do as an organisation is build the ocean. We're trying to identify the areas that are important to us as a business. So I'm going to talk you through a solution that we're starting to build now, and we've started to test and pilot some of these products to enable us to really build a really effective talent community solution that enables us to move away from being a reactive recruiter to about thinking about building candidate pipelines for our future needs. And at the heart of that is really our CRM. And actually what we're looking to do is build a database of qualified talent that also includes candidates that have previously applied to us as an organisation, and also includes candidates that have speculatively shown an interest in us as an organisation. Wrapped around that, everything that we're doing is GDPR compliant, and what we're trying to build is a job family aligned solution. So we're not thinking about specific vacancies and building pipelines for specific vacancies, we're thinking about core job families that are important to us that we know we're going to need on an ongoing basis. And there's two bits of technology that I think are really important for that, and or actually three bits of technologies. The CRM piece is Adepto. And again, you may have come across Adepto, but where we're looking at from Adepto is that it enables us to create a total talent community solution. So not just our perm external hires, but also what does our internal population look like? What does our freelancer population look like? And having one core community database across all of those different platforms. Candidate ID are here today. I don't know if anyone's come across Candidate ID, but we see Candidate ID as a really great tool for nurturing that pipeline and getting candidates from awareness all the way through to that decision stage. So we're in the process of trialling that within one part of our organisation, and actually it's within the social care space where we have a real issue around skill set shortage, and we're using candidate ID to reawaken the dead in terms of the people that we already have a relationship with, but also to encourage other people that are in the social work space to think about Essex County Council as a potential employer. We're also looking at Meet and Engage, and we've used it a couple of times to potentially encourage people into our communities. So let's say we're attracting developers, we might go out to the market with an attraction strategy to developers, and we might host a Meet and Engage chat event where we might get our head developer talking about the things that we're doing in our organisation, with a view to encouraging people to learn more about us as an organisation, and off the back of that, a call to action to join one of our talent communities. But we're also using that as an ongoing engagement tool so that when we've got people in our communities, we keep them engaged in us as an organisation by hosting events throughout the period that they're in our community about what's going on in our organisation, or to support process changes that we might have. At the front end of that process, went the wrong way. We're actually building that community. So we're using a tool, and we've been piloting this in one part of our organisation called Pocket Recruiter. I don't know whether anyone's come across Pocket Recruiter, but Pocket Recruiter has machine learning capability, both supervised and non-supervised, that enables it to read a job requirement, contextualise an understanding of that job requirement, automatically create a job search, and then go out to your paid-for CV databases and your own internal existing database, whether that be your ATS or CRM, and bring back matched and ranked candidates. So for us, that's a really exciting tool, right? Because what that enables our recruiters to do is actually spend time talking to candidates, as opposed to spending time understanding the requirement and building search strings. So not only is that a time efficiency, but it also means that we can rely on technology to find rather than people being able to build effective Boolean search strings. And we all know Booleans are a great language for going out and finding candidates, but we're not always great at building the best Boolean search string, and it can take time to get the right search results and not necessarily the best search results, because we've all got different capability in terms of how we build those search strings. So for us, Pocket Recruiter enables capability, it also enables efficiency, and we're using Pocket Recruiter at the front end to identify people that we want to bring into our community, but we're also using Pocket Recruiter at the back end. So we're giving it to our recruiters. So if you imagine in the proactive model of building a community, we then have recruiters that are working a live vacancy, and they're using Pocket Recruiter in the first instance to make sure that they can search our CRM to find candidates that we've been engaging over time through things like candidate ID and Meet and Engage, so that when they speak to a candidate, we know that they're ready to talk to us because they're engaged with our brand, and we've got a scored record against their candidate ID profile that shows us how engaged they are. But also we've got a ranked score from Pocket Recruiter based on how ranked and relevant they are to us as an organisation. So recruiters are therefore zoning in on the right candidates really quickly. And if they can't find anyone within our own database, Pocket Recruiter's going out and searching the external databases to very quickly give them a long list of candidates that they can then try and engage. For us, that's a really simple and effective solution that uses 4 key bits of technology, but can actually really make a massive difference in terms of time and effort that recruiters need to make. So with all of that in mind, I guess it's really important that we understand the impact of any technology that we try and implement. And what I would say is make sure that you're piloting the technology before you go big. So if I think about Pocket Recruiter, we're piloting it in one small part of our organisation. And the reason that we're doing that is that we don't want to assume that it's going to be great. We want to be able to prove that it will really make a difference. We're piloting with the right people. So it would be crazy for me to just implement Pocket Recruiter based on the fact that I've spent some time looking at it and I've decided that it's great, right? I'd love to do that, but actually it's not going to get the buy-in from the people that are going to use it on a day-to-day basis. But it's also not going to demonstrate that it really is a capable and relevant solution. So the people that are right to pilot the technology are the people that are going to be using it on a day-to-day basis. So that's our recruiters. So the people that are going to really help us decide whether a piece of technology is right for us are the people that will use it day to day. Before we start any pilot, we always define the key metrics for success. So what does good actually look like? So let's not just implement a piece of technology and at the end of it go, how was that? Was it okay? Did you like it? Really understand what it is that we're looking to achieve from that piece of technology. And so in order to understand whether that success has been seen, what we typically do and what we look to do is benchmark our activity prior to the launch of the pilot. So we understand what the recruiters are doing before we implement the piece of technology so that we can then look at what they did when the technology was in place so that we can compare the difference. So if I take Pocket Recruiter, for example, we were looking at the productivity of our recruiters in terms of how long it was taking for them to find suitable candidates, how many of those candidates were actually getting put forward for a hiring manager interview, how much time were they spending on the phone talking to candidates versus finding candidates, etc., etc. Post-pilot, we'll be able to look at those same metrics, but knowing that we had Pocket Recruiter in the mix. And that will enable us to very quickly demonstrate and build a case study and business case for why we want to implement that piece of technology going forward. So I guess, finally, the key points to consider, and that I've brought back the boy in the ocean thing, because I think that's the biggest thing that we should all remember from what we've talked about today, is that don't try and do too much too quickly. So I think, first of all, you really need to understand the process that before identifying the technology solutions. Don't just go out and talk to technology and try and find a reason for using it. Really understand the processes that you're trying to fix first, and that will help you zone in on the right technology platforms. And if you go back to my earlier slides of which technology platforms I've started to look at, that's because I knew what processes I was trying to fix before I started to build that slide. Don't try and do it all in one go, one step at a time. And some of the things that you might want to consider when thinking about that is, what are the processes that need immediate fixes? What technology platforms are likely to make the biggest impact? And where is the best return on investment likely to be achieved? As I said a moment ago, understand what good looks like before you start. Don't make decisions without the right people being engaged. So make sure when you're piloting the solutions that you've got the right people engaged. And actually that also means your IT department. I hate to mention it, but they are a critical part to any technology implementation in your organisation, both enabling you to implement it, but also ensuring that it goes through the right governance process from a security perspective. And trust me, I've had my fingers burnt in terms of trying to implement technology without having my IT techie friends involved in that implementation. So I'd recommend that you definitely include those in the process right at the start. And that's all I kind of wanted to talk about today, so I guess open to questions.